Hey, what's going on? It is an NTI day, so I am not really trying. I have like 5 layers of sweatpants on. It is a good day, and we're going to talk about the Congress of Vienna to start our new unit, Unit 9, which is called Age of the Conservative Order. The reason why this section is important is that this serves as kind of a bridge in between where we left off before Christmas with Napoleon and where we are heading next. Because Unit 8 was the Industrial Revolution, so that's covering some topics not really in the political arena, but we're getting back into how government is responding to different challenges here with Section 9.1. We're going to look at the goals, outcomes, and legacy of this thing called the Congress of Vienna, and then we introduce a man named Clemens von Metternich and how he plays a role going forward. All right, so I love this illustration of this drawing of Napoleon looking over the cliffs and thinking, oh, so sad, like what I've lost. But it really begs the question of the impact that he had on Europe during his reign. Again, this is a guy who took France from France and created the French Empire, in which France took over many areas of Europe, including some places in what we call today Italy. So there was this basically a battle cry that came up when Napoleon was being forced out and when the final Napoleonic Wars were happening. And you can read it there. I'm not going to go all Italian on you. But the translation is "Death to France is Italy's cry." And that basically was that angst that grew against Napoleon and the Bonapartes in France throughout his rule. So the French Revolution, Napoleon had in many ways wrecked France, which had in turn wrecked Europe. So the question is, how does Europe go forward with the revolution in the rearview mirror and with Napoleon in the rearview mirror? You know, sometimes you make mistakes in life or you do things in your life that you'd love to go back and erase it, and also erase the consequences of it. And you can be certain the leaders here are feeling, or the leaders of other European countries are feeling the same way, is how can we go back to where the French Revolution is not something we have to deal with? The people trying to fight for their natural rights, people trying to fight for democratic freedoms, that's something that we don't have to deal with. So that's going to bring us to Vienna, capital of Austria, beautiful city. I've never been, but I'm sure it's nice. And it is going to be the site of what's called the Congress of Vienna. And all the Congress of Vienna is a huge meeting of the major powers of Europe in order, and here is the deal. Let's see, can I get my toys? Yes, pen. I don't know, rock a little. Can I make that? No, okay. I can do this. Here's the big point right here. This meeting is, the purpose of it is to recreate a pre-French Revolution Europe, one defined by monarchy, clergy, and nobility, to put that social pyramid back into play, to put things back together. The leaders of this Congress saw that Europe was basically Humpty Dumpty, and it was their mission to put Humpty Dumpty back together again the way that it was. So we are going to, from this point until probably World War I, we're going to really be dealing with 5 countries. And those are known as the Big Five, at least for me. Fantastic Five, whether that's not a thing. But the Big Five, okay? The first one to know is Austria. And Austria is led by a king, but this guy, think of him as like a chancellor or number 2 foreign minister. His name is Clemens von Metternich, and we'll see him here in a minute. But Clemens von Metternich is Austria's kind of government leader, even though they still have an emperor and, you know, the traditional Habsburg leader. Okay? So he is the architect of Vienna. Of course, it's its home turf. And he has assembled the old regime, trying to take things back to the way that they were. You have Tsar Alexander I of Russia. Russia is also going to be supporting this recreation of what Europe was before the French Revolution. You also have representatives from Great Britain and Prussia there. And you also have France, which at this point now is led by the Bourbons. The Bourbons are back on the throne. Napoleon has been exiled to St. Helena, where he'll die 6 years later. The Bourbons are back in town. I think Louis XVIII is the one. Oh, what's this? That looks very official. We'll deal with that later. This is Louis XVIII. Okay, Louis the 18th is the one that is now back on the throne in France. So basically, that's kind of the setup, is you have these 5 countries here trying to recreate a Europe which is defined by what it was in the past. No, I want to stop. No more pen. Okay, there we go. So, we got some pictures. That is Tsar Alexander I, who looks like a giraffe. That's some dude. That's another dude. There's a guy. And then here is Clemens von Metternich. And I give him a gold star because he is the one from this conference, from this Congress, that is the most important symbol, the most important one to know in terms of trying to get things back to the way that they were. This Congress of Vienna was also kind of an interesting trivia bit. It's also known as the Dancing Congress because Vienna was the social capital of Europe during this Congress. Everybody who was important was there, so they meet during the day, and at night they go out and party. So you can see some of the just classic dance moves going on here. I know this guy, I'm not sure. This would be me. Okay, I'm just there judging everyone. So these guys are having some fun. So again, basically it's a social event, and it's also certainly a political event. So what are the goals and what are the outcomes? So when we come out of the Congress of Vienna, what do things look like? Here's one thing the Congress tried to do. The process of and the goal of legitimacy. The people that had been kicked off the throne by the Bonapartes, remember that Napoleon put his family there in charge of a little nepotism action? The Congress wanted to put those kings back into power. Okay? They wanted to also reward countries who had helped defeat Napoleon with land. So as France loses land out of this process, they're going to kind of siphon off land and give it to countries and German states which had helped, and Italian states which had helped defeat Napoleon. So that's great. But here's the big one. Okay? Balance of power. The goal was to arrange the map in such a way that no one country had such an advantage by resource allocation or whatnot that they could gain enough power to take over again. The goal is to prevent another Napoleon. So you've got to make sure that all the major countries have a fair access to resources, to materials, and make sure that they are working in such a way that one will not try to be top dog again. Okay, remember, we had the period with Napoleon, you had Louis XIV, so you've had about 150 years now of France on the continent being the superior power. What the Congress of Vienna wants to do is arrange the map in such a way that you don't have one country who can go up and just punch everybody in the face. Again, that's the goal. That's a nice hill. I'm not sure why that's, I guess, land. I don't know. Whatever. But the big one here is balance of power. Again, the goal is to make sure that everyone is playing equally. So what's the legacy of this Congress? Do they achieve peace? Do they keep revolutions from happening? Do they keep another Napoleon from going on? Well, in a way, this is kind of cool because the Congress of Vienna will prevent another major continental war between multiple countries for another 100 years, technically 99, but let's just say 100. For 100 years, you're going to have wars between 2 countries on the continent, and maybe sometimes even 3 or 4 by proxy, but you're not going to have a major, everybody is fighting Napoleonic type war until for another 100 years, and maybe you can guess what that big war is going to be. So it does pretty well in terms of keeping peace. Now, the legacy, though. The balance of power is restored. Britain, on the back of the Industrial Revolution, which really had nothing to do with what Vienna was doing, Britain will emerge most powerful. So it's not because of the political concessions that Britain gets. Britain's economic boost and economic power is going to make it the most powerful. But again, Britain's kind of separated, right? They're over there in the channel or off the channel, the island. So if these leaders wanted to pick one country that wasn't their own, that was most powerful, they'd probably pick Britain because Britain could do their own thing over there on that island. Now, here's the one thing, criticism for Vienna, is that there is long-term criticism for limiting the spread of the Enlightenment ideas. We're about to talk about that in a second, is that there is an active effort to prevent the spread of Enlightenment thinking. Because in their minds, and this is key, in their minds, the Enlightenment brought chaos. The Enlightenment had brought on the French Revolution. That Enlightenment is tied to the guillotine. So the goal here is to limit the spread of those ideas in order to keep peace and stability inside of your country. So how do you do that? You leave the Congress of Vienna. How do you make sure that the goals of Vienna are achieved? Well, you establish what's called the Concert of Europe. It's just a fun time. So, have you ever, here's something I always bring up, have you ever in your time with your friends talk about you're going to do all these cool things and then you never do them, right? Well, that's what the Congress of Vienna wanted to avoid. They talk about doing all these things to prevent the French Revolution from happening again, to prevent Napoleon from happening again. But they knew that they had to put things in place so that those goals could be achieved once they left Vienna. So the Concert of Europe, nothing to do with music. It is a series of arrangements to enforce the status quo, to stick to the status quo as defined by the Congress of Vienna. So this is the muscle behind the papers that were signed. So you can sign all the papers you want and make all these agreements. Unless you put systems and processes in place to make sure things happen, you are not going to achieve those goals. So what does that look like? Concert of Europe. Well, one thing that was established was the Quadruple Alliance between Russia, Prussia, Austria, and England. And if you need help remembering the little, you could do a little PER action, the pair of Europe, okay, the Quadruple Alliance. And what this basically was, these four countries agreed that if one country, one of these four, was under attack from its own people, aka a revolution happening inside of its own country, then all members of the alliance promised to help the reigning government. So let's be clear. Countries are not attacking countries at this stage. Countries, and by country I should say, governments, are helping each other protect themselves from their own people. Again, it's an anti-revolution matter. So say if in Prussia people are like, natural rights, let's get it going, then Russia, Austria, and England will send troops in to put that revolution down. It's a huge change of thinking in how nations interact with one another. The goal to prevent revolution. So that's the Quadruple Alliance. Again, France is not involved in this because they really don't trust France yet, that they won't kind of, do other things that they've done, but in this case, that's what we got. And France considered a constant threat. That's well in a minute. The next thing is a Congress system. And what the Congress system was is that countries are going to meet every couple of years to discuss new threats. So they're going to come in, and Metternich's going to lead this process. Again, Metternich, who's the Chancellor, Foreign Minister of Austria, he's going to say, okay, where's a revolutionary activity happening? And they're going to meet every couple of years to make that happen. This worked great until the year 1822, which is 7 years after the Congress of Vienna, when Great Britain decides to withdraw because they don't like how a possible revolution was handled in Spain. So Britain withdraws from the system and takes with it a lot of the economic power behind the idea. So the Congress system really kind of falls apart after that year of 1822. But it's something that you can kind of include in this argument, that these European governments are trying to actively prevent other revolutions from happening, and this is part of the process of that going on. So, that's the end of this section. Pretty simple. Congress of Vienna, very important. It's kind of a halftime mark, and we're going to get to the point where we're looking at these kind of huge peace conferences. We'll look at Westphalia again, we'll look at Vienna, and then we're going to look at the Treaty of Versailles as well after World War I and how that was a massive screw-up. But compare and contrast kind of with these other treaties. So that's Congress of Vienna. 9.2 is then going to take us a little bit forward. The challenges that are brought by the French Revolution and the Industrial Revolution. How does European, not only government and politics, but also society at large, economics and whatnot, how do you handle those challenges? We're going to look at several various ways to do that. So 9.2 is going to be extraordinarily important for the next 3 or so units. But 9.1, also the Congress of Vienna, marks a change in how European countries are trying to relate to one another. Not by attacking one another, but governments helping each other to keep the bottom from getting to the top. So that's all we got for 9.1. We'll see you for 9.2.